Because Denis was never just a father watching from the sidelines. He was the foundation of Alexandra Oliynykovan's entire career. The man who drove her to junior tournaments. The man who managed the travel, the sacrifices, the uncertainty, and the endless grind long before anyone in the tennis world knew her name. The man who believed in her future before rankings, sponsors, or headlines ever existed. Then war changed everything. For nearly 2 years, Denis could not watch his daughter play in person. While other tennis parents sat comfortably in stadiums around the world, he was serving on the front lines, following her matches through highlights, messages, and brief updates whenever possible. That is what made Strasbourg feel so much bigger than a normal tournament. For Oliynykova, this was not simply about rankings or prize money. This was a rare chance to play in front of her father again before he returned to war. Every point suddenly carried emotional weight. Every game mattered differently. You could see it in the way she fought through the long rallies. The way she refused to mentally collapse after losing the opening set. The way she kept chasing every ball as if the match meant far more than tennis itself. Because deep down, she understood what defeat would mean. Another goodbye. Another separation. Another uncertain wait before seeing her father again. Pressure like that can either break an athlete or transform them. In Strasbourg, it transformed her. On the other side of the net stood Alexandra Eala, carrying a completely different kind of burden. By 2026, the young Filipina star had become one of the fastest rising names in women's tennis. Trained at the Rafa Nadal Academy, armed with fearless shot-making and remarkable composure, she represented the hopes of an entire tennis nation. And for much of the match, Eala looked like the better player. Her timing was cleaner, her movement sharper, her aggression more consistent. But tennis has always been vulnerable to emotion. Sometimes the player performing better statistically still loses because emotion changes everything: momentum, confidence, even fear itself. By the third set, the atmosphere in Strasbourg no longer felt like a normal tour match. The crowd had become emotionally invested in Oliynykovan's story. Every defensive retrieval drew massive cheers. Every momentum swing felt dramatic. And when Oliynykova surged through the final games of the match, it no longer looked like strategy alone. It looked like pure emotional release. For those final moments, she was no longer just playing tennis. She was fighting for one more memory with her father before war took him away again. Because Denis volunteered for the Ukrainian army, nobody forced him to go. He chose to leave behind the safety of everyday life and step into a war zone. And when he made that decision, he also stepped away from his daughter's tennis career, from the victories, the heartbreaks, the emotional press conferences, and all the moments parents normally experience beside their children on tour. For nearly 2 years, Denis had not watched Alexandra Oliynykova play a single match in person. No courtside seat. No post-match embrace. Only score updates, short phone calls, and distant glimpses through screens while serving on the front lines. Then suddenly something extraordinary happened. He was granted a 2-week leave. Denis was coming to France. But there was one painful reality attached to it. If Oliynykova lost in the first round in Strasbourg, he could arrive just in time to watch her leave the tournament. That possibility stayed in her mind the entire match. Afterward, she explained it through tears. This win is very important to me because my father is in the army defending Ukraine. It's been almost 2 years since he watched me play live. Now, he has a short vacation, and he's coming tomorrow to France. Then came the line that silenced the entire room. Every day is emotionally important because I don't know when he will see me play again. That was the reality behind her words. This was not a normal vacation, not a peaceful family reunion. It was borrowed time carved out of a war that does not stop for tennis tournaments or Grand Slam schedules. She even revealed that she planned to ask tournament officials to schedule her next match on Wednesday instead of Tuesday so her father would have enough time to travel from Ukraine and actually sit in the stands. Think about that for a moment. Most players spend tournament weeks studying opponents, adjusting tactics, and preparing physically for clay court battles. Oliynykova was trying to organize her match schedule around military leave papers. At that point, Strasbourg stopped feeling like a sporting event. It became the story of a daughter trying desperately to create one more memory with her father before he returned to a place filled with uncertainty and danger. And on the other side of the net, Alexandra Eala had no idea about the emotional storm unfolding around her opponent. But once the match started, the tension inside the stadium became impossible to ignore. Eala opened brilliantly. Sharp, aggressive, fearless. She stepped inside the baseline early, attacked Oliynykovan's looping defensive shots, and controlled the rhythm of the rallies. Her timing looked perfect. The closing stretch of the first set alone was chaos. 14 deuces across the final 3 games. 14. Yet Eala stayed composed through all of it before finally sealing the set 6-3 with a brilliant forehand passing shot. At that moment, the match looked exactly how many analysts expected. The higher-ranked, more explosive young star appeared in control. Then the second set changed everything. Oliynykova adjusted her tactics completely. She disrupted Eala's timing, slowed the pace, mixed in awkward angles, and suddenly the rhythm disappeared from the Filipinos' game. The momentum flipped fast. Oliynykova stormed to a 4-0 lead, stunning the crowd and completely changing the emotional energy inside the stadium. But Eala refused to collapse. Point by point, game by game, she fought her way back to 5-5. It was the kind of resilience built into players at the Rafa Nadal Academy, the mentality to suffer, endure, and keep competing no matter how ugly the match becomes. But Oliynykova was playing with something deeper that night. Not better technique. Not greater power. Something emotional. Something survival-based. And in the biggest moments of the second set, that emotional force carried her through. She closed it out 7-5, and suddenly Strasbourg had become far more than a tennis match. I prefer this response into the third set. The match finally became everything the crowd hoped it would be. Tense. Chaotic. Completely alive. Alex Eala opened the decider under enormous pressure and immediately found herself trapped in one of the toughest service games of the night. 8 deuces. 5 break points against her. The rallies became exhausting battles of nerve and endurance, but somehow Eala survived all of them. She escaped the game, held serve, and then immediately struck back with a break of her own to move ahead 3-2. At that moment, it felt like she had seized control. She had absorbed the emotional atmosphere. She had survived the pressure. She had done all the hard work necessary to win. But then something changed inside Alexandra Oliynykova. Later, she explained the moment herself. At 3-3 in the final set, she stopped thinking about the pressure, the crowd, the stakes, even the result. She told herself that simply having her father coming to France already felt like a victory. And suddenly, she became free. Not tactically free, emotionally free. From that point forward, the match completely shifted. Oliynykova played the final stretch with fearless clarity, reeling off 4 straight games without dropping control once. The tension that had followed her all night disappeared, replaced by pure instinct and determination. And just like that, it was over. Oliynykova defeats Eala 3-6, 7-5, 6-3. The statistics behind the match barely seem real. She faced relentless pressure all evening. She saved 15 break points. She converted 6 of her 9 opportunities. In almost any normal tennis match, numbers like those would simply describe an incredible comeback victory. But Strasbourg was never a normal tennis match. Because once the final handshake happened and emotions flooded the court, attention immediately shifted away from the scoreboard itself. Another conversation had already been building in the background for months. A bigger conversation involving politics, sponsorships, public image, and the growing influence shaping modern tennis. And suddenly, this emotional war-linked story collided directly with that debate. That is where the real controversy began.